Russians need to experience the reality of war. Specific actions by the Ukrainian military should force a total shutdown of air travel over parts of Russia, and that would really make an impact. Valerii Riabykh, military expert and Defense Express development director, stated this on Espreso TV. These efforts, particularly those aimed at bringing the war onto the territory of the Russian Federation, which, in fact, started it, must continue, and this is the way to end this war. Because it should end where it began. And, of course, the first such signal for the Russian Federation itself is the reaction of the population, which in some cases still does not understand the nature of what is happening, he said. In Ryabykh's opinion, they may come to understand this through their own experiences. Such strikes, which are now being carried out by our defense forces, primarily include the destruction of the enemy's logistics near the front line, the destruction of the enemy's ability to produce means of warfare deep inside their territory. Also, for example, the destruction of the enemy's hydrocarbon facilities so that they cannot supply their army and receive foreign currency to continue this war, the expert emphasized. He believes that the most important thing is that all these actions lead to a psychological effect. As for what is happening now, the closure of connections at airfields, the introduction of so-called carpet plans, which were implemented in many areas of the Russian Federation over the weekend, such actions should lead to a complete closure of air traffic over a certain part of Russian territory, and this will be effective, Riabykh concluded. Recall, one of Russia's largest companies, Aeroflot, has been hit by a massive cyber attack. Hackers said they had gained access to all of the airline's internal documentation, including passengers' personal data and employees' official correspondence. The results of the attack were painful. According to reports from Russian Telegram channels, some planes were unable to take off, hundreds of flights were cancelled, and panic broke out at airports. Passengers were stuck in their seats, and Aeroflot itself found itself in a digital collapse. In addition to technical vulnerability, the situation revealed other unpleasant moments for Moscow. Russian propaganda has been talking about technological sovereignty, import substitution, and unique Russian software for years. Z-propagandists on social networks do not hide their indignation. Fighter Bomber complains about the almost complete absence of domestic developments in the technological and digital structure of a large company. He found only one Russian development in Aeroflot. It is noted that Russian dictator Vladimir Putin regularly talks about technological sovereignty, which, as it turns out, is not. His colleagues, other propagandists, also got it. The author recalled how they talk about the best in the world and independent Russian IT, software development, etc. In reality, it turned out that all this software is Western and extremely poorly protected. Besides, this software is ancient and full of holes, like the memory of patriots of Russia, they write online.
The Ukrainian armed forces have once again proven that they are ready to please the occupiers every day. The options do not end with missiles, drones, or the classic bullet in the forehead. On July the 26th, it became known that UAV operators began dropping bombs disguised as flowers and bushes. A video of the dropping of one such flower of death was published on his Telegram channel by journalist Yuri Butasov. In the recording, you can see how the surprise for the Russian invaders falls into the grass next to a forest plantation, where the bomb is difficult to distinguish from the rest of the vegetation against the general background. The next video already shows a review directly from the occupiers. A soldier of the Russian army calls the flower bomb a cunning thing, which is a bottle with a capacity of 1 to 5 liters filled with plastic explosives, TNT and fragmentation elements, placed in imitation vegetation. It works just perfectly, the frightened occupier admitted, advising his comrades to watch their step and, if they discover the flower of death, to wait for the engineers. Recall Ukraine's surprise thrust into Russia. armored columns slicing through unprepared defenses, seizing towns and settlements, is perhaps the most audacious gamble in more than 3 years of war since the invasion was launched by Russian President Vladimir Putin. There's a big psychological blow here to the Russian mindset, specifically Putin, where you have a Ukrainian penetration of Russian territory, first time since World War II, said former Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley. Putin is pursuing a long war strategy, relying on sheer weight of numbers to slowly grind down Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky is trying to shorten the war by bringing it home to Russian soil. Zelensky is betting his already stretched defensive lines in Ukraine will hold while he opens a new front inside Russia. He took a calculated risk in order to put himself in a position of strength for what he perceives could be the coming of some sort of negotiation, perhaps next year, Milley said. In the occupied part of Donbass, open irritation and anger of local residents towards the Russian occupation administration is growing. Life in the region is deteriorating at an alarming rate. Donetsk residents are showing photos of bottles with a cloudy brown liquid on social networks. This is the water that is supplied to homes in the city center once every 3 days or even less often. People go down to the basements with buckets to at least flush the toilets. The pressure doesn't even reach the second floor, but you can't drink, cook, or brush your teeth with this water. A number of publics write that the water cut off in the occupied city was a shock, and a shock even for those who had long ago come to terms with the Russian occupation and the fallen standard of living. The situation is worsened by the 36-degree heat that has covered the occupied region over the past few weeks. People admit they are on the edge. The water main in Donetsk is destroyed. Water is supplied once every 3 days for 2 hours. The occupiers justify themselves by saying that Ukraine allegedly blocked the canal. However, the canal itself was destroyed by Russian troops at the beginning of the invasion. Residents have not forgotten this and blame Putin's clumsy officials for what is happening. But the problems do not end there. The region's public utilities have collapsed. Garbage has not been removed for weeks. Mountains of waste are growing right under windows. Trees are not trimmed. Roads are broken to a dangerous state. People complain that moving around the city is becoming a life-threatening matter. Before the Russian occupation, the Donetsk region was one of the most developed regions of Ukraine, with a high standard of living and wages. Today, it is a desolate zone where even basic needs are not met. At the same time, instead of trying to restore order, officials who have arrived from the Russian Federation accuse locals of impudence for daring to criticize the situation. Quote from the public: "This is not rusty water. This is a suspension that does not settle. It stood for a day. It did not become cleaner by a drop." Donetsk, city center, from the cold water supply pipe. Against this backdrop, people who cannot stand such living conditions continue to leave the city. The indicative result of 10 years of life in the Russian world is devastating. Dirt and growing disgust for the occupiers, even among those who once supported them.
Что вы хотите? Вы за что боролись?
В смысле, что вы хотите, вы за что боролись?
Приходишь, допустим, в какой-то кабинет, там что-то говорит, а что вы хотели? Вы за это боролись?
И колонка работала. Сейчас ничего не работает.